The Dance of Dragons was a civil war during Targaryen rule, a war of succession between King Aegon II and his half-sister, over their father Viserys I's throne. The war was fought from 129 AC to 131 AC. It saw to the deaths of both rival monarchs, and the crowning of King Aegon III. King Viserys I had 3 children by his first queen, but only one survived to adulthood. Lacking a son to succeed him, Viserys began to train his daughter to be his heir. The young princess was included in discussions of the affairs of state and was allowed to take part in meetings of the small council. However, after his queen died, the king remarried and had 4 more children, including 3 sons, the oldest son named Aegon. Nevertheless, Viserys I strengthened his daughter's place in the succession. He married her to Sir Valerian, who himself had Targaryen blood through his mother. The princess gave birth to 3 sons of her own during the marriage, although there were rumours that they were of a bastard origin. When her husband passed away, the young princess married anew, this time to her own uncle, Prince Daemon Targaryen, younger brother to King Viserys I. Her sons by him are the future King Aegon I, called Aegon the Younger in his youth, to distinguish him from his uncle, Aegon II, who was on occasion called Aegon the Elder. Her father's intention that she should follow him on the Iron Throne was confirmed by the proclamation and will of Viserys I Targaryen. Upon the death of King Viserys I Targaryen, on the 3rd day of the 3rd month in 129 AC, the king's latest queen and Sir Criston Cole sent out the King's Guard to summon the small council members. During the gathering, the conversation quickly stirred towards the prince's coronation, but Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, told those who had gathered that it would be a new king who would be crowned, whilst the Master of Coin insisted that the princess should be crowned a queen. While many argued in favour of the princess, several other council members contradicted them. Sir Tywin Lannister argued that the oaths made to the princess in 105 AC had not been made by them. It was mentioned that the old king twice chose a male heir over a female heir, and while Sir Otto reminded them all that the princess was married to Daemon, who would become the true ruler should she gain the crown. Both Hightowers argued that not only they, but also the Queen's children would lose their lives should the princess become their queen. It would be later said that Prince Aegon only reluctantly accepted the crown because his mother, brothers, sisters, and children would otherwise be killed by the princess. The Grand Maester predicted a war, believing that the princess would never be willing to give up her birthright, since she had dragons at her disposal. Lord Breezebury declared that the princess had friends as well, and that he was not willing to sit here and listen to people plotting to steal her crown. As he rose to leave, Sir Criston Cole forced him back into his seat and opened his throat. This made him the first casualty of the Dance of Dragons. After his death, the Green Council began making their plans, vowing their loyalty to their new king and arresting all those in King's Landing who might be loyal to the princess, while ravens were sent to all those who may be loyal to King Aegon. Meanwhile, the princess remained on Dragonstone, unaware of what had happened. The princess made her own council, called the Black Council, upon hearing the news of King Aegon II's coronation. Despite having more dragons, they knew they wouldn't have the advantage, since the Greens possessed Vhagar, and from the 9 dragons belonging to the Blacks, only 5 were big enough for battle. Believing to have allies in the Riverlands who were only waiting for a place to gather, Prince Daemon decided to conquer Harrenhal as a base, while the princess would remain at Dragonstone. The hope was that this usurper King Aegon II, or Aegon the Elder, would rush into a rash attack, being the green boy that he was. The Blacks were convinced that Storm's End would declare for the princess, since they'd been supporters of her in the past. Though they believed the North to be too remote to play an important part in the war, the Blacks decided to send messages to those lords as well. The princess's eldest son and heir would bring messages to the Maidens of the Vale, the Starks of Winterfell, and the Manderleys of Whiteharbour. Her second son would go to Storm's End, a safer, shorter journey, according to the Blacks at least. After these decisions, the princess was crowned a queen, using the crown her father and great-grandfather had worn, thanks to Sir Darklyn, who had arrived from King's Landing. Prince Daemon, the princess's husband, was named Protector of the Realm, and her heir was officially named Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne, declaring Otto Hightower and Queen Alicent Hightower as traitors, while allowing her half-siblings to be forgiven if they would bend the knee. Upon hearing of these developments, King Aegon II declared the princess and her husband as traitors as well. Hoping for a peaceful end to the war, the Grand Maester was allowed to visit Dragonstone to speak with the princess or queen. The terms he brought with him were generous but were ultimately refused. Soon after, the princes left Dragonstone on their respective missions, and Daemon Targaryen left on his dragon to take Harrenhal, which fell quickly to him. The Queen's heir managed to get Lady Arryn, the Lords Manderley, Borrell and Sunderland, as well as the Lord of Winterfell, Cregan Stark, to join the Black's cause as well. The princess's second son had flown to Storm's End. When he arrived, however, he found Prince Aemond and his dragon Vhagar already present. Narrowly avoiding a conflict, having sworn to his mother that he would not engage in any combat on his diplomatic mission. In response to his arrival, Lord Baratheon responded by asking which one of his daughters the prince would marry, should he do what his mother wanted him to do. He was already betrothed, however, and had to inform Lord Baratheon he could not marry any of his daughters. Prince Aemond then drew his sword before the young prince could leave, and Lord Baratheon's men had to hold him back, stating, "He came as an envoy, I want no blood shed beneath my roof." But Lord Baratheon had no control over Prince Aemond once they left the walls of his keep, and he gave chase upon the back of Vhagar. Being 5 times bigger than the young prince's dragon, he had a great advantage. Vhagar easily bested the other dragon. His head and neck would wash ashore 3 days later, along with the corpse of the young prince. And with his death, the war of ravens and envoys and married pacts came to an end, and the war of fire and blood began in earnest. An eye for an eye, a son for a son, he shall be avenged. These are the words of Prince Daemon Targaryen and the Raven to his wife, upon hearing the news of the young prince's death at Storm's End. In retaliation to the young prince's murder, Daemon hired 2 skilled cutthroats from King's Landing, known only as Cheese and Blood, who snuck into the Red Keep using secret tunnels and hidden doors. They took King Aegon II's queen hostage, along with 2 of her sons. They barred the door to the Tower of the Hand and killed the guardsmen present, gagging the queen and holding a knife to their sons' throats, stating, "Which one do you want to lose, your grace?" Calling themselves debt collectors, they gave her a choice of choosing which one of her 2 sons would die. She offered herself instead, but they refused and stated if she didn't choose, they would rape her daughter and in the end kill them both. She reluctantly chose her younger son, but they did the opposite and killed the oldest in response, who was only 6 years of age. True to their word, they did not hurt anyone else, but fled with the dead prince's head. After this event, the queen slowly went mad, staying in her chambers, no longer being able to look at her other son, knowing she had named him to die. After the fall of Harrenhal, King Aegon II suffered defeats at the Burning Mill and Stone Hedge, making the young king realise his situation was quite severe. Ravens returned from the Reach, and while House Hightower of Oldtown and the Arbor stood firmly behind King Aegon, the Lord of Three Towers, Uplands, Lord Tully of Horn Hill, Lord Rowan of Golden Grove, Grey Shield all declared for the princess, as did the Vale, White Harbour, Winterfell, the Blackwoods, and other river lords who were assembling at Harrenhal. It is not for you to plead for support from your lords, like a beggar, no better than a peasant. You are the lawful king of Westeros, and those who deny it are traitors. It is past time they learned the price of treason. Duskendale fell easily, and Lord Darkland was beheaded. The crown's attention then turned to Rook's Rest, who closed their gates but could not protect the small folk. The Lord of Rook's Rest sent ravens to Dragonstone, begging for help. The help that arrived was the princess herself, on her own dragon. Unbeknownst to the Blacks, however, the Crown Loyalists had been expecting a dragon to appear. These men attacked the dragon with scorpions, longbows, and crossbows, but it only served to piss off the dragon. Next, the Green's dragons, Sunfire and Vhagar, appeared, the princess's dragon standing no chance against them both combined. The dragons fought 1,000 feet above ground, with the princess's dragon's jaws closing around Sunfire's neck, and Vhagar fell upon them, causing all 3 dragons to crash into the ground. From the ashes, only Vhagar arose. Sunfire had 1 wing torn from his body, whilst his rider, King Aegon II, suffered from several broken bones and severe burns. The princess was found completely burned to a crisp next to the dead body of her dragon. After the battle, Prince Aemond and Sir Criston took the Rook's Rest and put the garrison to death. The head of the princess's dragon was brought back to King's Landing, inspiring fear amongst the small folk, causing thousands to flee the capital until the gates were barred. King Aegon II was brought back to King's Landing, where maesters attended his wounds, sleeping 9 hours out of every 10 under the influence of the milk of the poppy. Sunfire was too large to be moved, and due to his injuries and unable to fly, the dragon thus remained at Rook's Rest, where guards were posted to keep him safe and feed him. With Aegon unable to rule, Prince Aemond assumed the style of protector of the realm. The whore on Dragonstone is not the threat, no more than Rowan and these traitors in the Reach. The danger is my uncle. Once Damien is dead, all these fools flying our sisters' banners will run back to their castles and trouble us no more. The host Prince Damien had gathered at Harrenhal was still growing, and Prince Aemon believed him to be the real danger, not the Black Queen sitting at Dragonstone doing shit all. As such, Aemon rode forth from King's Landing with a host of 4,000 and the dragon Vhagar. However, Damien knew of their plans even before Aemon had left the capital. When he arrived at Harrenhal, he had expected to find Prince Damien and his forces there. Instead, they found Harrenhal abandoned after 19 days' march, and believed themselves to be victorious, that perhaps the rebels had simply fled the field upon seeing them. The truth of the matter was very different, however. With Vhagar away from King's Landing, only Dreamfire remained, and that dragon's rider was in no condition to fly. Prince Damien had not fled, but joined with his queen above the skies of King's Landing, leaving the small folk below in terror. The Black's fleet sailed into the Blackwater Bay, and the only one left to defend the city was King Aegon II's wife. The Grand Maester tried to dispatch ravens asking for help, but was arrested before a single letter could get sent. And in the end, King's Landing fell within a day. All those from the Green Council who had been in King's Landing when the attacks began were arrested, save for Lord Larys Strong, who had disappeared, taking with him the wounded King Aegon II, his daughter and youngest son, along with Sir Willis Fell, Rickard Fawn of the Kingsguard. The other Green Council members yielded, and the Black Queen took her place on the Iron Throne. King Aegon's wife was spared, but her father, Sir Otto Hightower, was beheaded. Saitana Lannister was given to the torturers in the hope of regaining some of the gold he had hidden. The Queen's return to King's Landing was cheered and celebrated at first, but the amount of heads on spikes and the increasing tax rates made the small folks dub her King Maegor with tits. While the news of the fall of King's Landing reached Prince Aemon, fighting in the Riverlands continued. He burned Darry, Lord Harroway's town, Lord's Mill, Buckledon, Buckle, Claypool, Sileford, Spiderwood, and basically any Riverland castles that got in his way. Is it just me, or does the Riverland burn in every single war in Westeros history? Aemon still remained a threat in the Riverlands, despite the great victory for the Blacks at King's Landing. Yet the real threat was the great army of Lord Ormond Hightower, slowly advancing on King's Landing. They were defeating the Queen's loyalists wherever they went. Yet to defeat Aemon and Vhagar, Prince Damien and his dragons had left for the Riverlands. Lord Hightower's army remained at Tumbleton for a time. Making no solid decisions on the course of action, the army slowly became smaller and smaller every day due to desertions. Unbeknownst to the Blacks, King Aegon II had been smuggled out of King's Landing and was being kept hidden in Dragonstone, the last place anyone would think to look for him. Meanwhile, in the Riverlands, Prince Damien's host had arrived at Harrenhal, spreading word throughout Westeros that he would meet Sir Damien in single combat above the skies of Harrenhal. He waited for 13 days. On the 14th day, Vhagar appeared in the sky, and on her back rode Prince Aemon. Damien's dragon Caraxes fell upon Rhaegar, starting the fight. The fight was a sight to behold from the ground, but ended with the two dragons locked together, tumbling down towards a lake. According to the tales, this was when Prince Damien leapt from one dragon to the other, with the Valyrian steel blade Dark Sister in his hand. Aemon looked up in terror, but was chained to his saddle and could not do anything when Damien ripped off Aemon's helm and drove his sword through his eye. The dragon struck the lake half a heartbeat later. Caraxes lived on long enough to crawl back onto land beneath the walls of Harrenhal, where he died. Vhagar died in the water and was found some years later when the dance was over, with Aemon's armoured bones still chained to the saddle, and with Dark Sister still in his eye socket. There's no doubt that Prince Damien died that day, as he could not possibly have survived the impact. His remains, however, were never found, causing singers to tell tales that he survived and spent his last days with his lover. It was the 22nd day of the 5th moon of the year, 130 AC. Meanwhile, things for the Blacks were not going according to plan. The news from King's Landing was grim, with news of a great peasant revolt. They had raised a mob in order to kill the dragons, no longer believing that the Black Queen could protect them. They marched on the dragon pit, where 4 dragons were slumbering. The first to die was slain by a woodsman who slammed his axe into a dragon's skull. Another was killed by a knight who was lit on fire. Another fought on and died, while the last, Dreamfire, killed more of the rioters than any of the other dragons combined, until a crossbow blinded one of her eyes. Dreamfire then tried to leap free, and the weakened dome cracked under her force, only to crash down upon both dragon and dragon slayers. The Black Queen and her councillors agreed that the city was lost, overrun by those that would surely kill her, given the chance. Slipping through the Dragon Gate, she started the journey to Duskendale. When she returned to Dragonstone, the Black Queen found her casted and slain. Her guards were quickly slaughtered and she was imprisoned. Once inside the gates of the castle, the Black Queen stood face to face with King Aegon II and his dragon Sunfire, who had flown to Dragonstone some time before. Not long after Dragonstone had secretly fallen to King Aegon II, ravens had arrived telling him about the Black Queen's return to Dragonstone. This had given Aegon the opportunity to prepare for the arrival of his half-sister. And so it was the Queen found her brother in her own seat. Aegon wasted no time and had his half-sister fed to his dragon, whilst Aegon the Younger looked on. With the chance that the Queen's loyalists would continue the fight in her son's name, Aegon the Younger became a hostage. On the 9th day of the 12th month, Sunfire the Golden Dragon died on Dragonstone. After this, Aegon started planning his return to King's Landing. Though the Black Queen was dead, her cause lived on. Aegon would sit the throne again, but it would only last another half a year. The time for hiding is done, King Aegon II declared. Let the ravens fly that the realm may know the pretender is dead, and their true king is coming home to reclaim his father's throne. The dance ended with the death of King Aegon II, and the ascension of King Aegon III. The two lines of House Targaryen were brought together by wedding King Aegon III to Aegon II's daughter, the only surviving child of the pair. Their marriage would sadly end childless. Due to his young age when coming into his crown, Aegon III had an unknown number of regents during his early years of his reign. Eventually, possibly after reaching manhood, he named his brother Prince Viserys as his hand for the remainder of his reign. The Dance of Dragons would also be the last time the dragons lived in health. With so many dragons having died during the war, only a handful remained. The reign of King Aegon III would become known as the time the last dragon was born, lived and died, a stunted thing. This has been the brief history of the Dance of Dragons, with much content cut out in order to keep the video somewhat short. This was recorded on a need-to-know basis, so a lot of the minor battles and details have been left out. I do apologise for that, but it was necessary in order to keep the video within the boundaries of like 20 minutes. I also apologise if I've pronounced anything wrong. I probably have. I do that a lot, as most of you already know, but I really don't give a shit. Thank you for watching anyway, guys. This has been the Dance of Dragons. Soul out.